And now, it's time for the Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin.
Hello, listeners. Can you believe it is November? Ready or not, the holiday season is here. We finally had some cold weather here in southern Missouri, which helps bring on feelings of the holidays. I'm much more likely to think about turkey dinners or Christmas decorations if I'm wearing a sweater instead of a t-shirt. Speaking of holidays, our guest today is one of the authors of A Very English Christmas, which is a novella collection featuring noted classic literature authors Jane Austen, Charles Dickens, and Beatrix Potter as some of the characters in the stories. Carrie Turansky will be joining us to tell us all about it, as well as talk about her other historical romance and dual timeline novels. I can't wait. Before we begin, I'd appreciate it if you would take a moment to follow me on social media. You can find me on Facebook or Instagram at author Erin Mifflin. When you do that, you can stay in the loop about which guests I'll be interviewing next on the show and also keep up with my own writing journey and any publishing news that I have. Now, one more thing. Don't forget that today is the last day to enter the giveaway for Karen Barnett's latest book, Through Water and Stone. I loved this book, and I am so excited to give a copy to one of you. To enter, go to authorerinmifflin.com/Karen Barnett and follow the instructions there. I'll draw the winner tonight on November 3rd, so hurry on over there to make sure you are entered. authorerinmifflin.com/Karen Barnett. Now, let's bring in our guest. Hello, Carrie, and welcome.
Well, hi, Erin.
Now, your recent release, A Very English Christmas, looks like a true delight for fans of English literature. Can you tell us about this novella collection?
Sure, I'd love to tell you about A Very English Christmas. It's a novella collection that I did with two other author friends, Carol Lear Johnson and Marguerite Gray. And it's set in England in 3 different eras, and each one of us chose a famous British author to be a secondary character in our novella. So Carol has Jane Austen, I have Charles Dickens, and Marguerite has Beatrix Potter. And then there's also a contemporary wraparound story that ties the whole book project together with a young heroine who visits her grandmother and helps her in her antique and rare bookshop. And the items that appear in each of the novellas show up in the antique shop, and then the grandmother shares the story that's behind each one. So it's a real cozy, good, heartwarming, and holiday read.
Yes, that sounds so fun. And of course, anybody who loves classic literature is going to get an extra bonus from reading those.
Yeah.
So like you said, your story in the collection features Charles Dickens. Did you learn anything new about Dickens while doing research for this novella?
Well, that was really fun. I loved learning more about Charles Dickens. So my novella is set during the time when he's writing A Christmas Carol, and my hero in the story is his good friend who is his reader and helps him with his publisher and that kind of thing. And Charles Dickens wrote a couple book projects before A Christmas Carol, and they were actually flops. And his publisher was very hesitant to work with him on the next project, which was A Christmas Carol. But Charles was just so determined to see it released in time for Christmas that he put forward the funds himself to see that the book was put out in time for people to read. And actually came out, I think, on like December 16th, just a few days before Christmas. But then it was so successful that it sold out in just a few days. And it had quite a big impact on people who read the story. And it changed the way people celebrated Christmas. So I really enjoyed learning more about that.
That is really cool. And I'm sure you've seen the movie, too. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Dan Stevens plays Charles Dickens when he's writing the story in a similar time frame.
Yes, yeah, that was a great inspiration. I kind of had that in mind as I was writing, because in the movie, I think it's The Man Who Invented Christmas is what it's called. He has a good friend named John, and I thought, well, I wanted to learn more about that story. So that was the inspiration for the hero in my novella.
Oh, how cool. So what was it like working with the other authors for this collection?
Well, that was a good experience. Carol and Maggie and I all met in a Facebook group for authors and readers who enjoy writing and reading books that are set in England or Ireland, called Inspirational, UK and Ireland, Books, Readers, and More. And so as we were writing our own novellas. We would write a couple chapters and then we would send them to the other authors and they would each critique, for each other. So that was really helpful. And then when the book was done, I took on the role of publisher, put it all together, and I even designed the book cover. So it was a great learning experience for me, and we're really happy with how it came out.
That's great. I didn't realize you designed the cover. The cover is really beautiful.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's fun. I have an art background, but learning all the new, techniques that you need to use now is totally different than when I went to college for
Yes.
graphic design, that kind of thing. But you still have that artist eye, I think, and that helps you if you can get over that technical humps. It's kind of a fun thing to be able to use my art background.
Yeah. So while we're talking about Christmas, what are some of your favorite Christmas traditions?
Well, I love, decorating our house for Christmas. Our Christmas tree is a memory tree. So all the ornaments remind me of trips we've taken, or the ornaments are gifts from friends or family members. And then one of my favorite traditions is taking part in our candlelight Christmas Eve service with our church family. I help decorate the church and prepare for that. So it's wonderful to see so many people bringing their family members and friends to church that evening. It makes it really special. Another tradition that I enjoy that I do with my readers is my Christmas house tour. So I used to do it with just still photos of how we decorated our house and then just comments about Christmas. But now I actually make a video and take them around the house and just show them some of the places where we have decorations and talk about those. It's just a fun way to connect at Christmas time.
Well, that's really fun. So have you already done that for this year, or is that something that readers can look forward to?
Well, I'll put it up in December after we get those decorations up.
Yes. Now, where I live, people are already going crazy with Christmas decorations because I live close to Branson, and it's actually a city ordinance that businesses have to have their Christmas decorations up by November 1st.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So we're seeing lots of Christmas stuff down here. So you've written for several Christmas novella collections over the years. What do you like about writing Christmas stories?
Oh, well, Christmas is just such a special holiday. It really draws families together, and it gives us time to focus on God's love for us and his nearness and just the wonder of his plan and in sending Jesus to earth. And so stories that are set at Christmas, they give me more of that opportunity to shine a spotlight on God's love. And that's what makes them special. I really enjoy it. I think I've written probably 6 different, most of them are novellas that are set during the Christmas season.
Yes, it is a special time of year. And, there's some things that can be hard about it, but there is still, when you just get down to what Christmas is really about, it's just such a special time filled with that love that you're talking about. So after writing so many stories that were historical romance, your last 2 full-length releases, which are The Legacy of Longdale Manor and A Token of Love, they're dual timeline. Was it hard to make the switch from one timeline to 2?
That was a challenge because, as you said, I mainly was writing historical novels that were just set in one time period. And then with a dual time story, you usually will have a contemporary plot as well as a historical plot. But before I wrote historicals, when I first started writing, I did several contemporary novels. So I said to myself, I think I can do this. I know how to write contemporary and I know how to write historical, but it's actually a little more challenging than that, because you have to find themes and it has to be meaningful how the stories connect and crisscross. So it was a little bit more of a stretch for me, but a fun challenge too, just to take on, a new way of writing and almost like a brain teaser. You have to figure out ways that the stories can connect so that it is meaningful for readers to be able to switch back and forth between the 2 eras.
Yes, I can definitely see that. Now, what do you like most about writing dual timeline?
Well, it's always exciting when you find those connection points between the stories, because you're looking for ways that you can show a theme in one part and then reflect it in the other timeline. So it does really stretch you as a writer. And then it's the best part, I think, is the great relief when it all comes together. Yeah. And for The Legacy of Longdale Manor, it was very easy just to go back and forth between historical and contemporary, and it just seemed to fit and flow. But when I wrote A Token of Love, there were some mystery elements, things that the contemporary people couldn't know. And so it didn't come together as easily as the first book that I wrote that was dual time. So with my editor's help, we were able to move things around and still have it flow in a way that made it enjoyable for readers.
Oh, good. Sometimes we just need some brainstorming with other people.
Yes, yes.
Now, I personally was introduced to your writing in your Edwardian Bride series, and its first book is The Governess of Highland Hall. And the story really stood out to me because of its strong faith themes and the principal main character. So why is it important to you to include faith themes in your novels?
I do feel that's really important. And I like what one of my favorite authors is, Robin Jones Gunn. And she said, our books are like paper missionaries that are sent out into the world to touch readers' hearts and draw them closer to God. And I just love that. And, faith is at the center of my life. So it's natural for me to include it and try to weave it in natural ways. But as I'm plotting a story, I'll often ask, how would God help someone deal with the problem that my character is facing? Who or what would he use to speak to them? Sometimes I think about what lie they might believe and what truth do they need to learn that will help free them and set them on the right path. So I like to say that in my novels, you'll always find family drama and romance and history, but you'll also find inspiration and faith that will hopefully, encourage someone who's reading to see how God could really work in their heart and life.
Yes, that's a great goal. So your husband is also an author. Can you tell us about his books?
Yeah, Scott is a pastor, a counselor, and an author of more than a dozen books, and his focus is on parenting, and he also has some on marriage. And he has a doctorate of degree ministry, and he uses all that he's learned over 40 years of studying the Bible and teaching the Bible in church and applies that to family life. So his books are very practical and biblical. And his best-selling book is probably Parenting is Heart Work. And then another favorite is Say Goodbye to Whining, Complaining, and Bad Attitudes in You and Your Child. So he trains parenting coaches in churches, and he meets with many families on the phone and through Zoom to help them find strategies for their parenting. And his ministry website is just biblicalparenting.org.
Well, that's awesome. That's definitely a needed thing. I work in Christian schools, and you can just tell some of these homes that the kids are coming from, even the ones, who are making the sacrifice to send their kids to Christian school, sometimes those home lives are pretty rough. So we need all the parenting help we can get.
Yeah, parenting is a real need for a lot of people.
Now, on your website, you have a page sharing about your writing journey. And as I was preparing to talk to you today, I learned several new things about you. So, for instance, you were one of the first 100 members of the group that would later become American Christian Fiction Writers. And I personally love ACFW and been so blessed by them. And you've been at every conference that I've attended, so I know it means a lot to you as well. Can you tell us about how ACFW has touched your life?
Well, being part of ACFW since 2000 has been a real blessing in my life, and I've made some wonderful friendships with authors. I also connected with my agent there and met several editors who I was able to work with for my books. And I'm always inspired and encouraged by that time when I go to a national conference and get to connect with people. I also love being involved in our zone. I'm in the New Jersey, so I'm in the Northeast zone, and we're kind of spread out. And there's not too many of us. So we meet online by Zoom, usually every other month. And then sometimes we get together in person. And just this week, one of our authors in our group had her debut novel come out, and she's having a book launch party that we're going to attend. And I was just so excited for her and so happy to celebrate with her. Her book is great. It's so different than anything I would have read. It's called The Tattooed Woman at the Well.
Oh.
It's totally different type of writing than I do, but the faith element is very strong in her books, and her writing is wonderful. And I think, we've all been encouraged and strengthened through taking part in our online group and then getting together for some retreats and different events. So I'm really thankful to be part of ACFW. It's a great group.
Yes, that is so great. That is one thing that I love about the Christian author community is the way that we can celebrate with each other and cheer each other on. There's just really nothing like it.
Yeah, it's very unique.
Another thing I learned from your writing journey page is that your family spent time in Africa as missionaries. Can you tell the listeners how that experience played a part in you becoming an author?
Yeah, Scott and I have 5 adult children now, but that time they were ages 8 to 15. And we spent a year in Kenya, lived on a mission station where Scott was filling in for one of the professors at a Bible college. And our children, who had been homeschooled up to that time, attended Rift Valley Academy, which is a boarding school for missionary children, but it's right there on the station. So they lived at home and then walked up the hill to go to school. We were able to travel around in Kenya, see some amazing sights, animals, and take a photo safari, and met so many interesting, wonderful Christians there. It was a great life-changing experience for Scott and I, and also for our kids. It had a huge impact on them. And when I got back to the United States after that year, I just missed Kenya so much. I thought, I'm going to write a story that's set there to relive my experiences. Now, I had never written fiction before that. I had mainly just done, papers in college and journal writing, that kind of thing. So I just poured out a story as it came to mind. And I didn't really, know the technique. So it's always going to stay in my drawer, but it was a great learning experience. And I'm just very thankful that we had a chance to take our whole family and go and live in another country and serve the Lord and see what life is like there.
Yes, I can only imagine that would be very life-changing. And yeah, it's fun that not only as part of your spiritual life and as part of your life as a family to go through that, but then also to have it tied into your writing life. That's pretty special as well.
Yeah, it was a great experience.
So in looking at your website or your social media or in reading your newsletter, it is very clear how much you love your family. What are some of your favorite things about being a wife, mother, and grandmother?
Well, it's a great blessing to have a family, and Scott is a great husband. He's a good father, grandfather, pastor, counselor. So I love teaming up with him in ministry and in family life. We've been married for 47 years, and I honestly can say it gets better every year. We have 5 adult children and 12 grandchildren, and that is another really important blessing. They're spread out all over the East Coast, some in New York, Maryland, South Carolina, and Georgia. So that means we do a lot of traveling so that we can stay in touch. And we also spend a lot of time encouraging them through FaceTime calls and visits. And I really enjoy that. They're very important to me, and I hope that they sense our love and support wherever they are.
Yes. Well, I can sense it just from, like I said, reading what you put out there. So I'm sure that they can also. Now, besides your family and writing, what are some of the other delights in your life?
I really enjoy gardening, mostly growing flowers, but I do also grow strawberries, blueberries, peaches, tomatoes, and herbs. And just spending time out in the garden or even just watering my plants, it's like therapy for me.
Yeah.
I was out there today, I went on a walk, and then I thought I still need a little more exercise before I go sit down again. So I was sweeping up leaves on the patio and just enjoying being outside for a while. We live right across the street from a park that has a small lake. And so I enjoy walking around that lake. It's just a little more than a mile. So it's about, just a 20-minute walk. And I like to see the birds and the turtles. And sometimes when I'm there at the right time of day, I'll actually see the fish jumping up out of the water. So that's kind of fun. I like to cook, and so I enjoy cooking healthy meals for my family and friends. And I also like arranging flowers for special events and weddings. So my little sweet niece was married a couple weeks ago, and she lives in California, and we were coming out for the wedding. Scott was going to officiate, and so I told her, I'll help you with the flowers. So I actually made all the flowers for the wedding with my sister-in-law's help, and that was just a fun and enjoyable way to use that training and talent that I have for that.
That's really great. And I loved hearing you talk about the park. I always enjoy exercise, but a lot of times I will just do something like walk on the treadmill or something like that. But when one of my nieces was little and I was in charge of a lot of her care at that time, we would go to the park because you can't really walk on the treadmill with like an 18-month-old child, depending on you. And so we would go to the park almost every day that one particular summer. And it was so fun, like you're talking about, to see the turtles and just to watch the birds fly across the water. That really stands out in my mind as like a golden summer, just because that was such a highlight to go so often. And it was a special time.
Yeah, it's great to be able to have some time outdoors. I really enjoy that.
Now, is there a scripture that has been meaningful to you recently?
Well, here's one that I really go back to over and over. It's Lamentations 3:22 to 24. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. The Lord is my portion, says my soul. Therefore, I will hope in him. And I like that one because it reminds me, it's good to talk to yourself and tell yourself these truths. The Lord is my portion. That's what I tell my soul. And that's where I can put my hope that his faithfulness, it's going to be there for me every day.
Yes, and it really is. He does not fail.
That's right.
Sometimes we don't always know how he's going to come through, but he does. Now, how can readers connect with you?
Well, I always love to connect with readers. Of course, I have a website, which is just my name, Carrie Turansky. And if readers come there, I have a free short story for them called Keeper of Her Heart. And then it has some fun pages, photos of my research trips to England. I have links to all the recipes that are mentioned in my book, which I often mention a recipe. And then I also am on Instagram and Facebook. So you can find the links there on my website for those too. So you can click right in and join me there and see what's happening.
Listeners, please do go to carrieturansky.com to find out more about Carrie and her books. Let me spell her name for you. CarrieTuransky.com. Carrie is such a sweetheart and an encouragement to so many authors like me who are early in our writing journey. And it's just always a pleasure to talk with her and to see her at conferences. If you like dual timeline novels, make sure you check out the ones by Karen Barnett that we talked about in our last episode. And you can find that interview on my YouTube channel in case you missed it. I also always want to make sure to recommend Amanda Wynn, especially because I'm reading her latest book now and absolutely loving it. It's called Echoes of a Silent Song, and it's about some youth choir directors and a mystery from 1969 that they are trying to piece together, as well as working with their students. And Amanda herself works with high school students, so you can definitely tell that the book comes from an authentic place. And just like we talked about last time, some other authors of dual timeline novels are Melanie Dobson, Jamie Jo Wright, Amanda Dykes, and Christy Cambron. So if that is a story style that you enjoy, make sure you check out the works by these ladies. Now, if you like Edwardian fiction, which Carrie has written some of those, some authors that I would recommend are Rosanna M. White, and I just love Rosanna's books. They are so good, and she knows how to tell a good story. She has really great characters that you can really sink into and get to know, and her historical storylines are always engaging and interesting. Another who writes in the Edwardian times would be Pepper Basham. Now, she writes both historical and contemporary, and I happen to like both of them. I actually probably like her contemporary stories a little bit more personally, which is a little unusual because I love a good historical fiction. So definitely check out Pepper's contemporary books, but don't miss the historicals as well. She has some mysteries as well as some stories about her Appalachian heritage with a fictional story spun around those. And then she is re-releasing some of her very first books, which are also set during the Edwardian time. And I've actually not read those first books that she has written, but she is coming out with new covers and she's updated them a little bit. And that's definitely making them even more appealing for me to check them out. So if that kind of thing appeals to you, you can check them out as well. I have had both Rosanna and Pepper on this show, and you can find those by going on my YouTube channel, author Erin Mifflin, and finding those interviews there with Rosanna M. White and Pepper Basham. Another Edwardian era author is Elizabeth Camden. Now, I have to tell you, Elizabeth Camden is one of my absolute favorite authors because of the way that she takes real history, and it's real history that maybe you have not heard of before. A lot of what she writes about, I have not heard of before, and she just makes it so interesting and really makes me dig into what was going on at that particular time period that I do not know about. For example, she has a whole trilogy about water in the state of New York. Now, if you're like, well, that does not sound very interesting, I might agree with you if I had not read those books, and she has made them just so fascinating. One of the books is about someone who is designing a water filtration system, and I have to tell you, I've never read a better book on water filtration. So Elizabeth Camden is one that I wholeheartedly recommend to you as well. Now, before we go, don't forget to enter the giveaway of Through Water and Stone by Karen Barnett by going to authorerinmifflin.com/Karen Barnett. I'll be contacting the winner tonight, and who knows, if you go over there and enter right now, that might be you. So tonight, November 3rd, I will be drawing the winner, so don't waste any time. Now, if you want to hear more interviews from authors you love, don't forget to follow me on Facebook or Instagram at author Erin Mifflin. You can feel free to drop me a suggestion about authors to reach out to, as well as just hear who I have already contacted about being on the show next. You can also sign up for my monthly newsletter at authorerinmifflin.com, where I share links to these interviews. I share some book reviews and recipes and any news that I have about my own writing journey. And you might want to tune in just for that reason. I might have some pretty exciting things to share pretty soon. And until next time, happy reading!
Join us next week for another episode of The Well-Read Llama with your host, author Erin Mifflin. If you'd like to find out more about author Erin Mifflin, visit her Facebook and Instagram accounts.